part, because it wasn't an event any more than a Strava segment. And with COVID, a lot of these virtual races that people put on, they have to be gauged by a GPS documenting system that populates data. And Strava tends to be, I think, one of the most popular things I know about. But what's been cool about Strava is I've been getting fitter. I'm able to go out to these mountain, king of the mountains, they call them, and there's all the records and all the times. So I could go up and climb it fast and say, wow, that was faster than the guy did it in the race 2 years ago. But then you've got the whole problem with how are the winds, or was it snowy, or was someone competing and there was strategy going on so no one was going for a record. The king of the mountains are cool because once you get the time, it sticks, and it sticks whether it was done in a race or whether someone did it on the best of conditions. They're kind of fun to get. And I've kind of embarrassed to admit I've got addicted to that. And that's really been a reward for the fitness I have right now, because I can actually go back and I can go do the Mount Marathon course, or I can go do some of these, every popular mountain run where hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people run it is going to have a King of the Mountain segment. People put them together, and then those are the segments you go for. So I knew there was one in Kodiak on a very prominent mountain there. Kodiak, Alaska is an island, about an hour flight south of Anchorage. And it's known for bad weather, but it's ocean bound. It doesn't necessarily have a lot of snow there. But I went, I knew a guy who was he works for the Coast Guard. He's I would say maybe 3 times the badass I ever dreamed of. He's one of those guys that he has a record of 5,000 pull-ups or so in 24 hours. And he has some crazy record where he lifts 11,000 pounds in 2 minutes, bench pressing, where they just sit there and knock out 300 pounds, and they move it to 260, then 220 and 210. And by the end, they're pumping out 90-pound reps. And they're just trying to get, you get it, you're adding up the weight. But whatever records there are out there, people figured out a way to put the data together so they can make it. But anyway, he was interesting and compelling to me enough where we'd kind of met on Instagram. And he's like, dude, come down here and come try this mountain. And he was excited because it's a training mountain that the special forces use down there. A lot of the military, it's right by the base. And so I went and I met him, and he said, hey, might be able to give you a ride out to the start. And I said, no, I'll just I ran from off base. And what the problem was that day, the weather was pretty bad. There was 20 knot winds, and I'm never going to break a record with a headwind or crosswinds. And it was raining and it was sleeting. And my exit point off the base was only about 400 yards away, and I could see the mountain. So I just ran towards the mountain, and that was right in line with the gate to get out of the base. And I'm like, next thing I know, I'm like 20 minutes in, I'm like still on base. I'm running around the neighborhood, and I call him. I'm like, dude, I can't even get off base. The weather's got so bad. I can't even see like 40 feet in front of me. I can't see the mountain anymore. And he's like, here, he drove, he finds me. He's like, follow me to the start. So I ran to the starting line. That's where it started. What's cool about Strava is you can wear a GPS watch, and it'll say, okay, you're 100 feet from the start, 80 feet, 60, 20, and it counts down. And right when you get on the segment, boom, it starts updating you. And I could see my time compared to the best time.
Yeah. So Matt, real quick, what are you wearing? Did you fuel up before you started? What are you carrying with you, and what's the temperature? You said it was sleeting.
So it was about 35 degrees. It was a sideways rain, 20 knot winds. And I was wearing, now this is where the critics will come in and say how stupid I am, but I would give myself credit to know that how long it was going to take me to get up. And then I knew I would get to the top. If I got the record, I'd turn around, I'd come immediately down the ridge line. Very obvious trail.
Yeah.
And I knew I'd be out there exposed to the elements for at most an hour. The King of the Mountain was 28 minutes or so. And that's how I did it. So I'm wearing shorts, had some Innovate shoes. It doesn't matter whether they're Innovate or not, but I like a lightweight shoe with big lugs. Yep. And then it's almost like a flat. So I like the fact that I don't sprain an ankle because there's no drop on that shoe. Yep. And shoes, and I actually wore more clothes than I wanted to. I put a jacket on, and I carried my cell phone with me, which I didn't want to. But he said I needed it. If I wanted to get back on base, I'd have to call him because I needed my cell phone. So last thing I want to do is carry extra weight. So I didn't even want my cell phone in my pocket. I could feel it bouncing around and I wore an extra jacket that I wasn't going to wear, but and I had a cap and some light gloves.
Okay.
So I started up the trail, and it's kind of crusty. You could tell it had been raining a lot, and it was muddy, but it had frozen overnight. So the trail, as I was approaching it, it was good traction, but it was kind of a crusty, icy, soft mud, if you will. But I had good purchase. I was connecting good. And I started running, and my watch said within about 2 minutes in, I was 6 seconds slower than the record, and I was like, ugh, this is going to be a tough record. But it was interesting as I turned up and started ascending. It's about 40. The mountain's 41% average, so there's sections that are about 60% degree, and then there's sections that are about 20. But to give you anyone listening who doesn't know, 60% is almost, you've got to use your hands and feet to go. It's pretty steep.
Right. 20%
you can run. You can still run, and if I'm really fit like I am now, I can run. I'm still running at 35% incline at probably about 4 miles an hour, if that gives any picture to anyone.
Sure.
So I start going up, and I look down at my watch, and I'm now even with the record. I'm now 20 seconds up on the record. I'm beating it, and I've all of a sudden got a tailwind hitting me so well on the back that it was almost lifting me up the mountain. I was like, this is pretty cool. And so the ridge was right up, and the way the wind was hitting the mountain, it was just literally, it was like, I was able to run stuff that I'd normally never be able to run. I was getting a huge aid from the wind, and I'm climbing along, and I'm about the halfway point. The mountain's 2,100 vertical feet, and I'm about 1,200 feet into it. And I hit the snow line from snow that had fallen from days before.
Mm-hmm.
And traction wasn't bad, but it was getting worse. But again, I had this crazy wind, and like the wind was blowing so hard, it would like the back of my jacket was filling up like a parachute. And if it switched back at all, if I took a direction or an attitude change, all of a sudden it would almost push me over. And I could tell I was getting at that point into the 40, 50 mile an hour winds.
Mm.
I'm switching to mile per hour off knots, because I guess we're not pilots here. So I'm going up. I get to about 1,700 feet. I'm 3 minutes up on the record. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is insane. I'm going to get this record. Whether I'm this fit or this wind has aided me, I don't care. This is going to be done on just an epic day of horrible weather. And there's a cross that marks the finish line. And I could see the cross. There's a big cross up at the top of the mountain on this barometer mountain, it's called. And I think I only had about 3 minutes to go. I had music playing in my earbuds. I had my phone in my pocket. And I thought, I just got to get to this one song, and I'm going to be at the top. But the sleet now was hitting the side of my legs, just burning, and just like felt like razor blades hitting my legs. I couldn't see because the snow and ice that was flying through the air was starting to fall, and it was hitting my eyes. And I was like, this is getting pretty crappy. And with 100% of surety, had I not been on pace for the record, had I not had someone down waiting to see if I was going to get the record, and had I just been there by myself, I would have turned around right then for sure. Even that short of the mountain at top, I would have turned around. But my, whatever you call it, my pride or ego, or just the fact that I was getting a huge accolade by getting this king of the mountain in my head, I thought I'm going to get to the top. And I had this thought that as soon as I get to the top, I'm going to pull my camera out and do a quick little video and just be like, heck yeah, I got the record, beat some Navy SEALs, I'm 46, whatever in my head I was going to say, quickly went away as I started to realize I couldn't see it. The only thing I could see was I kept making out that cross, and I was now like maybe 30 seconds away from it. And I thought, geez, just keep going. It's not that big of a deal. Yeah. But now all of a sudden the snow is collecting so quickly. It's a foot deep. And now I'm literally on my hands and feet, and I'm looking at my time. And in the last 30 seconds, I'm like losing time so quickly. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to crawl at like a half mile an hour across this finish line. And so, crossed the finish line. I went a little bit further just to make sure the Strava GPS would populate properly. I'm like, okay, sweet. And I looked down, the watch said King of the Mountain. I was like, awesome. And I broke the record by a couple minutes, and I was like, oh, sweet. So I pull my phone out, and I'm like, oh geez, I'm shivering already. And I obviously sweating, and the wind, it was, I don't want to exaggerate, because a lot of people like to throw out 100 mile an hour winds, but I know if it gets above 70, it'll knock me over. Yeah. And I started to get knocked over because I turned around. I quickly made an incoherent video you couldn't hear in the wind for about 20 seconds. I put my camera, and I couldn't even put it in my pocket because my hands were so cold, and I was already losing kind of feeling in my fingers. I got my pocket open, unzipped, phone in it, and I turn around to look back at the cross I'd run past, and it was gone. There was no footprints. There was no trail, and I literally couldn't see 10 feet further than where I was.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, holy crap, you'd think, oh, no big deal, just start going down. But the problem is it's on a ridge line. So if the ridge is 40 to 60% steep, the edges, you're going to be sliding out of control. You might be coming off a cliff. You might be coming off a mountain edge. And that immediately went through my mind. And I started to go down, and I can see a lot of this story is put together by looking back and seeing the GPS. As the story gets worse and worse, I lose a lot of consciousness a few times throughout this experience. And so some of it's been pieced together as I've had to go, look at my GPS, see what actually happened. But this is a moment where I didn't know I was starting to descend the wrong way. Completely I was going over the top of the mountain, down the other side of it. And then I sensed it was getting too steep. So you'll see me loop back. And then I kind of go up for a while. And then all of a sudden the panic sets in, like, I'm going to die. I'm going to get hypothermia. And it wasn't like a fear of like over dramatic, like, oh, that's a big deal. Because I've been in a lot of experiences in Alaska where I should have died. We escaped death, but this was the first time where I was actually thinking, I'm in big trouble right now.
Yeah.
And so I thought, okay, now my only option is I have to descend. If I don't get down lower, that's the only chance the winds are going to get less. And that's the only chance that snow might stop and I can actually get some traction. And right about as I was thinking that, I started sliding on my back, and I slid for 50 feet, maybe 100 feet. I'm not sure. I just remember thinking I'm out of control. And my body came into a patch of alders, which are kind of like Alaska's term for like short, thick trees that are like super hard to hike through. It's the most horrible thing to walk through, but it's just branches and low level bushes basically. And I slid into those, and when I came to a stop, my leg hit a tree. And I looked down, it was bleeding, and everything was kind of numb on me. But I looked down like, oh my gosh, I think I broke my leg. But I stood up, and I'm like, no, it's not broken, because my foot's still working. I'm still moving. And I was shivering like crazy. And I was like, okay, gotta keep moving. I was trying to move fast because I was trying to get my heart rate up. But it was like my heart rate was probably 70, 80 beats per minute right then, because I was descending. And I knew I had to have it higher because I had lost body heat, and I don't know what my body temperature sure was at that point. I don't know what stages of hyperthermia I was in at that point, but I was definitely onset stages of it.
Now, were you halfway down at this point, or 3/4 of the way down? I'm looking at your post here. I mean, I can see your lines coming down the ridge.
I was about 3/4 of the way down, and I'd found my way into by this point, I was kind of in a valley or ravine, a spot where a creek would start. Mm-hmm. Waterfall almost, and then it would turn into a creek that headed down to a lake or the ocean. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking I can at least follow this creek. The problem is creeks don't necessarily take the non-steepest route. They'll take the steepest route sometimes. So I'm trying to stay on the ridge of this valley or draw where the creek's going down. Because as soon as I get down and think, hey, I'll just follow the creek, all of a sudden it'd be super steep. And then I found myself falling into the water. I slipped one time off the edge, slid down again, went in the water, and my face was getting hit by branches. And I thought, if I keep hurrying, I'm going to make an accident, and I'm going to poke an eye out, or I'm going to break a leg, and I'm going to be stuck, and I can't move. And if I stop and I can't move or don't move fast enough, I'm going to go into the next stage of hyperthermia, which is complete incoherency. Mm-hmm. So about that time, my phone rings in my ear, my Bluetooth, and I thought, well, holy cow, okay, I got my phone. Okay, and I reached up and I pushed the earbud, and I hear Charles on the other end. He says, Matt, where are you? Matt, it's been too long. What are you doing? And I said, I'm lost. I need help. I think I need help. And he said, okay. And what was interesting is I could hear him perfectly, but he couldn't hear what I was saying over the wind at all. It was just all his end after the fact, after talking to him, was he just couldn't hear me talking. And he kept yelling at me. He said, stop. I need to get your GPS coordinates. And I said, I can't see anything. I looked down at my hands, and although it was an illusion, my hands looked like Frisbees, and my feet looked like I was walking on watermelons. And he said, get your phone out and look at the GPS coordinate. And I said, I can't see anything. I can't even move my hands. And I kept yelling that at him, like, it doesn't matter. He says, do you want me to make the call? Which he was referring to calling Coast Guard. And my first thought was, if I'm talking to the fittest guy who's a rescue person for the Coast Guard, and I just broke the record, I don't know of anyone who's going to get me, let alone the fact that I'm here and I can't even see 5 feet in front of me. So I guarantee you no helicopter or anything is going to find anything other than a dead body tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I just kept moving, and I could hear him, and then it'd disconnect, and then he'd call back, and he'd say, Matt, I need